really question, is aluminium safe? And there is a study that was done in 2004 and was published in a very highly reputable medical journal called Lancet. And it was called a systematic review with meta-analysis, meaning they took many studies that used aluminium vaccines to see what the effects were. And so they looked for the DTP alone or in combination, either with aluminium, without aluminium, and they did this big elaborate analysis. And it was done by this Cochrane collaborative database, which is an independent review board, world-respected independent review by Dr. Thomas Jefferson, okay? And the conclusion in this study was that despite a lack of good quality evidence, we do not recommend that any further research on this topic is undertaken. So you might be doing this, like I was. And we have to ask, why would they have said that? If we don't have conclusive evidence, if we don't have good quality evidence, how can we say we shouldn't do any more research? They're basically saying, carry on and don't go there. Well, in the study, they talk about how the reason that they have nothing to replace aluminium with. So if we were to stop giving aluminium, first of all, you would all start questioning the entire vaccine program, and we cannot have that. But second of all, immunization programs worldwide would fall apart because we would not be using this ingredient that they need to have in more than half of the vaccines. So they said, don't go there. Okay? So they're not considering the health of the individual. They are considering what they call disease reduction, at least specific disease reduction. In my opinion, has been disease elevation in many populations as a result of these vaccines. But they're different diseases. So American authorities put their thoughts about this on paper back in 1984. And this was called Federal Register that came from the Department of Health and Human Services from the United States government. And this circulation came around because a lot of people were unhappy about the polio vaccines that were causing big problems in babies and children. And so they said that any possible doubts, whether or not well-founded, meaning whether they're correct or not, about the safety of a vaccine cannot be allowed to exist in the view of the need to assure that the vaccine will continue to be used to the maximum extent consistent with the nation's public health objectives. So they were basically telling doctors back in 1984 that even if there is a good reason to question or criticize the vaccine, we must not do it. However, what I find interesting is that when a scientific journal or a scientist devises a new plan, that they are allowed to say something bad about the old vaccine. For instance, Dr. Jonas Salk and Dr. Sabin both said bad things about each other's vaccines because they wanted their vaccine to be taken by the public. And today, we have very prominent vaccine doctors talking about injected influenza vaccines, saying we have problems because now they want to introduce new vaccines. And this study, where they concluded there is an immediate need for safe and effective adjuvants, basically saying that aluminium is not safe. It is effective, but it is not safe. The reason they said this is because they had a different adjuvant they wanted to introduce in the vaccines, an immune globulin called IgM. But I have not yet seen this on the market, and this was 2011. So it's important for doctors to know what is and what is not known about aluminium. And so it's been used in food and in vaccines for a very long time, since the 1930s. But even in 2013, doctors are saying there's still not enough information about the manner of their actions. So we know a lot about aluminium, but there's still a whole lot we actually don't know. Yet we continue giving it, and we continue adding more and more of it to the childhood vaccination programs whenever they think they need to. So the mainstream will have you all thinking that the safety science is all settled and that everything is well tested, because aluminium is in all these vaccines you see right here. And it couldn't be in there if it wasn't safe, right? And they couldn't have used it for so long if it wasn't safe. So to them, just the fact that it's been used for so long makes it safe. We don't need safety studies. We don't need to look at people who get a saline injection versus people who get aluminium. Because it's been done for so long, it's okay. Because it's been in your bread for so long, that is okay to inject it. And because it's been in some injections for so long, it's okay to give it in more and more injections every year. This is the logic. When you look at the Finnish vaccination schedule, your babies get injected with far less aluminium than our babies in USA. But that's changing. It seems that all countries are eventually going to catch up with the United States. But right now, you don't give your babies aluminium at birth, and we do. And you give your babies far fewer vaccines than we do, but that is also changing. But as of now, today, on your recommended schedule, the first injection comes at 3 months, and everybody gets this 125 micrograms. And then you get one of these two other vaccines, which has either 330 or 500. And then same at 5 months and 12 months. And then at 4 years, they get another dose, 500 versus 330. And I just want to point out that I believe there is some, how should I say this? That there is some discrepancy, non-uniformity in how the labels are on the vaccines. And that sometimes they tell you the elemental aluminium level, and sometimes they tell you the salt level. See, aluminium on the periodic table is an element, right? But you can't have it by itself. It's not like helium, you know, where it can just be alone. Aluminium has to be partnered with negative charge. So that's the salt. That's what we call the salt, okay? So if you look at this, this is an enormous amount. Usually the salt is reported, but sometimes they report elemental just because they don't want you to know that 1,500 micrograms, it's not all aluminium. But over on these other ones, this is all the salt levels, okay? If they get hepatitis B vaccine, the 3 vaccines together will give you 750 micrograms more, okay? And then there's some discussion about bringing, remember I just talked about RSV? Well, there's discussion about a highly adjuvanted RSV vaccine possibly coming to Scandinavia, but that study is still in progress. So this is essentially what's happening to your babies now. But if we compare the USA schedule with Finland's schedule, this is about what it looks like by age 6 years. So our babies get an enormous amount of aluminium beginning on the first day of life, and then over and over and over. So by 18 months, they have had this dose, 4,925 micrograms, and then at age 6, they get another dose. And then in Finland, your babies, depending on the vaccine, I'm very conservative. I'm probably underestimating how much your babies get, because I don't ever want to be accused of having too much drama, okay? So 3,125 micrograms if you give the hepatitis B vaccine and only count that elemental aluminium and not the salt. It would be far higher if you counted the salt. And the minimum dose would be here, okay? So you're getting probably 1/2 to 2/3 of what American babies are getting. But if you look at that, yes?
What was the S in the RSV?
Respiratory syncytial virus. Yeah, it basically means that when this virus infects, it makes cells clump together and become one big cell. So if you question this to your doctor, they'll tell you that you shouldn't worry about it, that there's really no problem. And this is just one example of the University of Oxford, very prestigious place that Europe will look to for answers. And they say here that the amount in the vaccines is extremely small, and that after vaccination, there's a temporary increase in the amount of aluminium, but then it doesn't stay in the body. They say that it gets rid of most of the aluminium in just a few days. Well, if that were true, none of us would have to worry. But it turns out that is completely untrue, and I will show you in a moment. And they say that small amounts accumulate naturally in children's bodies. Well, that's true. Probably if you live next to a uranium plant, small amounts of uranium would accumulate too, but it would not be healthy, even if it's natural, okay? So they say that this makes it okay. They're basically telling you a lie, and it is. It's a bold-faced lie that it comes out in just a few days, and they're telling you that it's just a little bit. The USA says the same thing. You know, our government comes out and they say aluminium in vaccines poses extremely low risk to infants. And these two doctors have put out some of the most famous reports that I will go over later. But even worse, in America, we have this doctor named Dr. Paul Offit, who most doctors, brainwashed doctors, will look to him for the answers, okay? He is the, we call figurehead person that they go to. You might have this same guy in Scandinavia under a different name. So this guy, his website says that aluminium is considered to be an essential metal. Essential means that you can't live without it, okay? So, okay, we can strike that down. With quantities fluctuating naturally during normal cellular activity. Wrong. It is found in all tissues and is also believed to, get this, that it plays an important role in the development of a healthy fetus. Did you know that? Because he apparently discovered this because all of the aluminium biology scientists say that there is no known biological benefit for aluminium in the body. So this man is having a fantasy that he puts on his website, and he's trying to make people stop worrying about this aluminium. And he bases this fantasy on some statements that come from some studies, and I'll just summarize a couple of them. He says that because during a pregnancy, the amount of aluminium in a mother's blood goes up, so that must make it good. But the real reason it goes up in the mother's blood is because the baby needs minerals. So where does the mother get the minerals? Her bones. So if she's had aluminium or lead in her bones, the levels will go up in her blood and they will be passed to the baby. But that doesn't mean that it's good, okay? That's not a state of health. He also says that the blood of premature infants has more aluminium in it than full-term infants. So it must be good. Prematurity is not a state of health, so we cannot measure anything that happens in a premature baby as reflective of a state of health. He also says that the breast milk of mothers of premature infants has more aluminium than that of mothers who carry their babies to term, so that must mean that it has good health benefit. Again, if I seem upset, it's because I am. I find it hard to take anything this man says seriously when I read things like this, but he is the spokesperson for vaccines in America. He has invented his own vaccine and become a multimillionaire as a result of it. And he sat on the committee that tells doctors which vaccines they need to give. This is called conflict of interest, and it's very bad.